Welcome to today's session of Employee Healthy Teaching Kitchen Bites. My name is Jessica Long, and I am a dietitian with the Minneapolis VA healthcare system. Today, we're going to be making Indian spinach with tofu. Employee Healthy Teaching Kitchen Bites is in collaboration with Whole Health, and these two programs come together to bring you this demonstration today. So, as I said, we're going to be making Indian spinach with tofu. The main ingredient of this recipe is, of course, tofu. Today I have extra firm tofu that I'm going to use for this recipe. You can see that it's in its package currently. Anytime you use tofu for maximum benefit to absorb the marinade and to get the best texture, you're going to want to press your tofu for about 15 to 30 minutes before the recipe. So this is what tofu looks like in its block, and I will show you what it looks like when it's all pressed. So that is what we're doing now. I'm leaving it in the commercial press. I have a commercial press because I do eat quite a lot of tofu. You can also use some heavy books. So what you'd want to do is put the piece of tofu on a plate, put some paper towels on top of the tofu, and then put a heavy pan on top, or you could put some heavy books. If you're using books, I would put another pan on top of the tofu so you don't get your books all soggy, because again, the purpose of the pressing is to release liquid so the tofu can absorb more flavor. And while that's pressing, we will continue preparing the rest of the recipe. First, we're going to start by chopping our onion and our garlic. You always want to make sure that you have a garbage bowl nearby when you're cooking so you can catch any scraps as you go. So with the onion, we're going to cut off one end and put that in our garbage bowl. And then I find the easiest way to peel the rest of the onion is to cut it through the equator. So you're going to go pole to pole. So I'm going to stick the flat end of my onion on the cutting board, and I'm going to cut right down the center. And that makes it much easier to peel. So then I'm just going to peel off the rest of the skin here. There we go. And then we're going to chop our onion down. So what we're looking to do anytime we're chopping an odd shaped vegetable is finding a flat surface. So I'm going to put that flat surface on my cutting board. I'm going to take my knife, make sure that it's clean. I'm going to take my knife parallel to that cutting board and just cut parallel to that root end. So I cut some parallel slices, and then I'm going to rotate the onion, and we're going to cut perpendicular to the root end. This will be the width of your pieces. And then I'm going to flip the onion again. I'm going to get my claw ready so I don't hurt my fingertips. I'm just going to come down on top of that onion, dicing it into nice, even pieces. And we're using the whole onion for this recipe, so I'll do the other half as well. So now I have 2 cloves of garlic. You could also substitute garlic powder for this recipe. You could also use the jarred garlic, the garlic and oil that's pre-chopped. That works very well. To take the skin off, I'm going to put the garlic on the cutting board, put my knife flat on top, being careful not to cut myself, press down very hard, and the skin comes right off. But if you like the pre-peeled, that will also give you that nice garlic flavor. So whatever you have in your pantry, you can make it work for you. So we're just going to chop up that garlic. The thing about garlic is the smaller pieces that we chop, the more flavor that we're going to have. So if you really like the flavor and sharpness of garlic, you want to chop those pieces as small as you possibly can. If you want it to be a little bit more mellow, you could leave the garlic slices, you could leave bigger chunks. Sometimes people will even simmer a whole clove of garlic in the oil and then remove it at the end. So you can adjust how much garlic flavor you want depending on how you're treating the garlic clove. I really like garlic flavor, so I am cutting it very small to really ramp up that garlic flavor. Okay, so our tofu is nicely pressed. You can tell by the amount of liquid in the pan. There is a lot in there, so if you can't see it super well, just know that while you're pressing, you'll see the liquid come out. And that's good, that's what we want to happen. Tofu is packed in water to keep it fresh. So again, removing the water helps the tofu absorb more flavor. So whatever you make with tofu, basically the sauce that you're making is going to be what makes the tofu delicious. So now we've got a solid block of tofu. So if you've never seen tofu, it just looks like this. It's a big block. And this again is the extra firm. So the less firm that it is, the less of a block shape it's going to hold. So what I'm going to do is I only need 8 ounces for this recipe. So I'm going to save the other, this is a pound, this is 16 ounces. So I'm going to save the other 8 ounces for another recipe. So we're just going to cut that in half and set that aside for now. This other piece, I want to have nice thin pieces because we want to get some browning action happening. And it depends on how much chew you want. If you want more chew, cut the pieces smaller. If you want less chew, if you want kind of a contrast between a crispy outside and a soft inside, cut the pieces a little bit bigger. Generally, what I like to do is, again, I'm going to take this half block of tofu, place the flat side on the cutting board. I'm going to cut it in half this way. Then I'm going to turn it, and I'm basically just going to cut even rows, probably 3 rows or so. And then we're just going to cut across this way. I like to start by cutting it in half and then again in thirds on each side. That way we have nice even pieces. Remember, the more even your pieces, the more evenly it's going to cook, the better result you're going to have overall. So let's head over to the stove and start cooking. If you've never had tofu before, this is a great time and place to try tofu for the National Nutrition Month World of Flavors, because this recipe really gives a nice flavorful sauce that the tofu can soak in as it cooks. But first, we're going to start by browning the tofu. All right, so I'm going to take my half tablespoon of olive oil, and again, I'm dividing it, so I'm just going to pour half in the pan. We're going to let that get nice and hot. So we're going to move it around the pan a little bit. What we're looking for is we're looking for that oil to start to shimmer or move a little more easily around the pan. So that's what I'm keeping my eye out for. And that can happen fairly quickly or a little more slowly depending on what kind of stove you have. We're almost there. Just give it another second or so. All right, I can smell my oil and I can see that it is moving very nicely around that pan. I'm going to throw my 8 ounces of tofu in the pan, and I want to try to keep them separate. Be careful not to burn yourself. You can use your implement to do this if you don't feel very confident about it, because we're going to get the best browning if the tofu is separate from each other. We have a little space. So I've got my flipper at the ready here. This is continuing to brown. I do want to highlight a couple of the international flavors that we're using in this recipe. So a couple spices that you may not be familiar with are cumin, turmeric, and garam masala. We're using garam masala today as kind of an all-over spice blend. It's a warming spice blend that has spices such as cinnamon, cloves, sometimes fenugreek, fennel, mace, cardamom. It's a bunch of spices all ground together. You can find it at the store in the international section, or if you have an international market near you. Or sometimes it's with the other spices as well. But it's just a great blend to add a little bit of an international flavor, and it's super easy because you can buy it pre-made. You can also make it yourself if you'd like. That can be a little bit cheaper. It's all up to you and what works for your budget and your preferences. The turmeric, there's a lot of anti-inflammatory benefits with turmeric. There's a compound in it called curcumin, and curcumin has been shown to help reduce inflammation. So using turmeric on a regular basis can help give you those anti-inflammatory benefits, which is just great for overall health. It also adds a nice yellow color to whatever you're making. It's a very vibrant spice. Cumin is often used in Indian and Mexican cuisine. It has a pungent aroma. If you think of taco seasoning, usually cumin is going to be the main spice that you're going to be getting out of taco seasoning if you smell taco seasoning. So if you're not sure what cumin smells like by itself, just think about taco seasoning. Okay, these are getting a little bit dark, so I'm going to pull them out. Now I'm going to take my other half tablespoon of olive oil, add it to my pan, and my pan's already hot, so I don't need to take a lot of time to let that heat up. You can see that it's moving around the pan really easily already. And we're just going to throw our onion, ginger, and garlic in there. So I've got my chopped onion, got my garlic, and ginger. And again, if you are using, you can certainly substitute chopped ginger for ground ginger in this recipe. If you're doing that, what I would recommend doing is adding the ginger with the rest of the spices. So when you're adding the turmeric, the cumin, the garam masala, you could put the ginger in at that time. And we're just looking to heat them up a little bit. If you can see that yours is browning a little more quickly than you'd like mine is, you can turn the heat down. You can always adjust the heat depending upon what your stove is doing. No matter what the recipe says, use your eyes, your ears, your senses to determine, do I need more heat or less heat? And it depends on the outcome that you're going for. If you're going for more browning, then you might want a little more heat. If you're going for kind of more steaming or translucency in your onion, then you want to go for less heat. So I was getting a lot more browning than I wanted, so I turned the heat down. The other thing you can always do if you're getting more browning, you turn the heat down and it keeps browning, you can add some water to the pan. That's going to help a lot too. Because then we're going to get back to the steaming, which will help cook it, but you won't be getting those brown flavors. Especially with the garlic, I don't want it to brown because a lot of times brown garlic can have a bitter flavor. There are some recipes that's advantageous, but for this recipe, I don't really want a browned garlic flavor in it. All right, so it says cook about 5 minutes. I think this looks pretty good. So now I'm going to add the spinach, broth, turmeric, cumin, garam masala, sugar, and salt. So basically everything else except for the coconut milk and the tofu cubes. Just enough sugar to bring the bitterness down from the turmeric. Turmeric can have a little bit of a bitter flavor, so sometimes sugar can help round out the dish or bring all your flavors together, but we don't want it to taste sweet. So a teaspoon is just about right for this whole recipe. Then about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then I've got my frozen chopped spinach. You can certainly use fresh spinach for this recipe also if you would prefer to do that. All right, and what we're gonna do is I'm gonna turn the heat up a little bit just to bring it to a simmer, because if you remember, I turned it down. Plus I added frozen spinach, which is gonna cool everything down. Okay, this is looking really great. Everything's come together. The spinach is definitely warmed up. The chill is gone. So now we're going to puree it. So you can transfer to a bowl for that, and I'm actually going to do that for this recipe. So now we're just going to puree it with our immersion blender. And again, you can transfer this to a regular standing blender if you would prefer. I love having an immersion blender for pureeing things like soups. You could also leave this chunky. You don't have to puree it. So now that that sauce is nice and pureed and all incorporated together, I'm going to put it back in the pan. And if this is thicker than you want it, you can certainly add more water to it. Then I'm going to put in the coconut milk, and I'm using reduced fat or light coconut milk. That's going to save you about 1/3 of the calories and about 20% of the saturated fat. I turn my stove on low just to warm it back up a little bit. And then I'm just going to put my tofu in and stir in my tofu.